Alright, so welcome back to the Race and Relationship series. Today is Monday, which means we're talking about race in the Bible. In today's video, we're talking about how do we respond to, or how do we handle racism or prejudice from, of course, a biblical perspective. What should be our response and our reaction? Alright, so we talked about in a previous video how there was some instances of racism in the Bible. We talked about how Moses had an Ethiopian wife and how Miriam kind of wasn't too down with that, and how she had her little racist remarks about it, and how God stepped in and intervened, right? But we kind of saw how God handled that situation, but how are we supposed to handle racism and prejudice? In the story of Moses, we saw the Bible just said that Moses was the meekest person, the most humblest person on the earth, right? It didn't really say how he reacted, what he did, or what he said. It just said that he was meek and humble. So, what does that mean practically? Well, there is a more, I guess, broader, more general example we can use, and that is of the Jews and the Samaritans. Now, back in the day, Israel was one united nation, right? Under Saul, under King David, under King Solomon, they're one united monarchy, one united, kingdom, one united nation. But after Solomon's reign, things started to kind of fall apart, and there was a division into two, right? There was Israel, whose capital city was Samaria, and then there was Judah, which capital city was Jerusalem, right? And then from there is the birth of the two sections, or the separation of the Samaritans and the Jews, right? From Samaria and from Jerusalem. And then pretty much since then, there was this beef, I guess you could say. They didn't really associate with one another, they didn't really talk with one another, they didn't inhabit the same lands with one another. There was pretty much this segregation. They kind of view each other as second-rate citizens, and so on and so forth, right? Classic examples of racism and prejudice, right? And so, how are we supposed to deal with racism and prejudice? Well, Jesus kind of offers an answer to that question. So in Luke chapter 10, we have the more famous parable of the Good Samaritan, right? So here's pretty much what happens. So this lawyer, I'll just read it to you, right? This is from Luke 10, get my English right, Luke 10, verses 25 and onward. And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, What is written in the law? What is it? What is your reading of it? So he answered and said, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, You have answered rightly, do this, and you shall live. But he, wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, Who is my neighbor? Alright, so this man comes to Jesus and asks him, Hey, what must I do to inherit the kingdom of God, right? And Jesus, I guess, takes a more Socratic approach and answers this question with another question. He says, Hey, how do you understand it? What the law say? How do you read it? And so the man answers him and says, Well, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus says, Hey, great, that's the right answer. Do that and you'll be good. But then it says that the man wanted to justify himself, right? By saying, okay, who is my neighbor? In other words, what he wanted to know is, who should I actually love? Who should I actually care about? Right? Because there are some people that I really don't want to have to care about. I mean, they're, the others that I don't really want to love or take care of. So, specifically, who is my neighbor? Right? That's pretty much what he's asking. And so Jesus answers this question, again, not directly, but he uses this parable as a way to answer this question, right? So here's what the parable is. Jesus answered and said, A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance, a certain priest came down their road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise, a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked, and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, put on oil and wine, and he set him on his own animal, brought him into an inn, and took care of him. On the next day he departed. He took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him, and whatever you spend, when I come back, I will repay you." So, which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? Right, so again, Jesus is taking this Socratic approach and he's asking a question, right? And so he said, okay, I just gave you this story of the Good Samaritan, right? Guy gets robbed, he gets mugged, he's left on the street half dead. You know, the priest comes by, he ain't doing nothing. The Levite comes by, he ain't doing nothing. I guess the equivalent would be like if a pastor comes by, or the elder comes by, or the priest comes by, or whatever church clergy official you can think of. They come by, they don't do anything. But, the Samaritan, or someone who is probably, the most ostracized person of the church, right, comes by and actually takes care of the man, right? So Jesus is saying, hey, out of all these people, who actually did the right thing? And this is what the man said. He who showed mercy on him. So he couldn't even bring himself to say Samaritan, right? He couldn't even say the word. He just had to say, oh, yeah, the guy who had compassion on him. Yeah, it was him. Yeah. And then Jesus says to him, go and do likewise. Right? And so Jesus uses this story for many reasons, but the more specific reason is to address this issue of you should love those even if you may not necessarily, they may not necessarily like you back or love you back, or there may be this tension or prejudice against them or whatever, right? Because there was this contention, there was this prejudice, there was this beef between the Jews and the Samaritans, and Jesus pretty much saying, look, just because he's Samaritan doesn't mean that you should treat him any less of a person. You should still love him the same, take care of him if he needs to, treat him with respect, with honor, with dignity, right? No matter who the person is, they deserve to be treated with love and respect. Everyone, essentially what Jesus is saying is that everyone is your neighbor, right? You should love everyone, right? So, I guess to make this more applicable to our day and age, right? Obviously, like I said, there's this kind of the classic tension between the blacks and the whites based on unfortunate years of history where there was not just, this racism, but there was like a legal, institutional racism against, it was oppressive. Like, it wasn't just like, oh yeah, I hate black people. It was like an oppressive, legalized system that was set in place, right? So there's that beef, but there's also, like for example, now we're having this whole issue of Muslims, and now people are hating Muslims now and stuff like that. So there's all these different beefs and tensions and prejudices that are coming up. And Jesus' response to it was, look, everyone is a human being. Everyone is equal. Everyone should be loved the same. You know what I mean? Like, everyone is your neighbor. Everyone should be seen as your brother, as your sister, as, someone who's part of your family, someone who you should care for and love for. Right? The way that Paul says this is he says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Right? Martin Luther King Jr. said a similar thing when he said, look, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can. In the same way, hatred cannot drive out hate. Only love can. In other words, the way that we should respond to racism or prejudice or hatred is not by adding more fuel to the fire by being hateful and prejudiced right back. But instead, we should respond in love. We should respond respectfully and with honor. Because, if I smack you and you smack me, we take this kind of eye for an eye approach, we're both going to end up being blind. You know what I mean? If we both take the tooth for a tooth approach, we'll both end up with a mouthful of gums. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a very effective way of approaching things. But if I love you and respect you, and you love me and respect me, then things would actually work out better. You know what I mean? Instead of us just fighting and arguing over each other, we might actually be able to, you know, solve our problems in a more humane manner. So do not be overcome by evil. Yes, it's annoying. Yes, it's stupid. Yes, it's frustrating. You know, there's nothing wrong with being angry, right? You have the right to be angry, but you don't have the right to act upon that anger in a violent way or in a irrational way or anything like that. Just, you know, respond in respect and in love. Okay? Easier said than done, granted, yes. But that is the response that we should have, because again, if we just respond in the same way that they treat us, we're never going to get to any resolution at all, right? If anything, if someone's being violent or racist against you, and you in turn are violent and racist against them, all you're doing is giving them more of a reason to be more violent and racist against you. But if you instead are being respectful and kind, then they'll have no reason. They'll look foolish, you know, picking on the little guy who's doing nothing to deserve it. So yeah, respect and honor, love. That's the way that we should respond to racism, because that's the only way that we can ever actually solve the problem, right? We know that, you know, fighting hate with hate and, you know, fighting bombs with bombs or whatever doesn't really solve the problem. So maybe going at a more diplomatic way, more loving, more honorable way might be a little bit more of an approach that we should take. Now, of course, people are scared of being perceived as weak or soft or whatever, so they don't really like that approach. But I honestly think that to be able to respect and love someone who doesn't necessarily respect and love you back takes more strength and more honor than it does just spit on someone's face after they spit on you. You know what I mean? It takes more heart, more love, more strength to be able to overcome evil with good than it is to overcome evil with just more evil. Alright? So, love, honor, respect, despite race, despite ethnicity, despite, you know, color, despite whatever the case may be, with religion, education, social class, whatever the case may be. Let's just love and respect and honor one another as just human beings. Think on these things.